یا رب تیرے بندوں پہ سایہ تیری رحمت کا ہو یاد تیری دل میں ہونٹوں پہ تیرا چرچا۔
السلام علیکم سامعین، پینڈل کمیونٹی ریڈیو آواز 103.1 FM پر آپ سن رہے ہیں میگزین پروگرام موضوع گفتگو کاشف رضا اور عبدالرئیس کے ساتھ۔ پروگرام میں آپ کو خوش آمدید۔ السلام علیکم کاشف۔
وعلیکم السلام ورحمۃ اللہ، کیسے مزاج ہیں؟
الحمدللہ، آپ سنائیے۔
میں بالکل ٹھیک ہوں الحمدللہ۔
برف کے مزے لے رہے ہیں میرے خیال میں اب۔
میری فیملی لے رہی ہے۔
چلیں تو سامعین کو بتا دیں کہ آج کا شو ہم انگریزی زبان میں کرنے جا رہے ہیں، کیونکہ ہماری آج کی معزز مہمان صرف انگریزی زبان ہی سمجھ سکتی ہیں، اور مجھے امید ہے کہ ہمارے جو ریگولر اردو سننے والے سامعین ان کو زیادہ مایوسی نہیں ہوگی۔ لیکن اس سے قبل کہ ہم آج کے موضوع کی طرف بڑھیں اور اپنی معزز مہمان کا آپ سے تعارف کرائیں، کاشف آپ کو ہم سے رابطے کی تفصیلات دیں گے۔ جی کاشف۔
سامعین، رابطے کے لیے آپ ہمیں کال کر سکتے ہیں 01282723455 0128272345 پر۔ آپ ہمیں میسج کر سکتے ہیں یا واٹس ایپ کر سکتے ہیں 07522723455 07522723455 پر۔ اگر آپ برطانیہ کے باہر کہیں سے رابطہ کرنے کی کوشش کریں تو آپ ہمیں 0 کی جگہ +44 ملا سکتے ہیں۔ آپ ہمیں لائیو سن سکتے ہیں فیس بک پر facebook.com/Pendle Radio۔ اس کے علاوہ ایک ویب سائٹ ہے internetradio.uk.com/awaz-103-1 FM پر۔ آپ ہماری اپنی ویب سائٹ پہ سن سکتے ہیں pendleradio.org، اور آپ کے پاس اگر کوئی ریڈیو اپلیکیشن ایپ ہے موبائل فون میں، آپ اس پہ بھی سن سکتے ہیں۔ اور آبویسلی آپ اگر علاقے میں موجود ہیں تو اپنی آپ کی جو گاڑیاں ہیں یا آپ کے پاس جتنی ریڈیو ڈیوائسز ہیں اس میں آپ ہمیں ٹیون ان کر سکتے ہیں 103.1 FM پہ۔ شکریہ،
بہت شکریہ کاشف۔ تو اب باقی کی گفتگو انگلش میں ہم کرتے ہیں۔ So the topic of discussion today is from Scotland to Kashmir. To talk more about this, we would like to welcome our respected guest, Claire Bidwell. Claire is a human rights activist and co-founder of a grassroots organization called Let Kashmir Decide. And Claire has actually recently returned from a trip to Azad Kashmir. So it'd be interesting to see what her views are about the area and what her visit went like. Good evening, Claire.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for inviting me along.
You're welcome. You're more than welcome. Are you well?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good. Yes. I'm fine. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Yes.
Excuse me. Yeah. Before we ask you about your trip, Claire, as you would be aware, one of the Kashmiri human rights activist, Khurram Parvez, was arrested on Monday by the Indian authorities on a ridiculous charge of terrorism. I just wondered what your thoughts are about this.
Yeah, I'm really quite shocked and horrified by it, really. I guess there's an element of me that's not surprised, given that they've silenced all other manners of society, right down from, the people, reporters, photographers, Facebook, even Amnesty International India has been silent. So it's now like they're coming for the human rights defenders. Khurram Parvez is like an organizer, program organizer of Jammu and Kashmir Coalition of Civil Society. And it's a coalition made up of different organizations. So one of those is the Association of Parents of Disappeared Children. It was originally founded, the group, by a human rights lawyer, and they've investigate and they look into all the alleged things that are happening in Indian-occupied Kashmir. So they have data and evidence of, the mass rapes, the arrests, torture of the prisoners, exploitation of women and children, all the young men that have disappeared, not able to, still trying to find out where they are and what's happened. So they have all this evidence. Now, obviously, they're a threat to India, and if he wasn't a threat, then he wouldn't be being arrested. So on a bigger scale, of course, it is really concerning. I do know that 6 human rights big organizations have been in touch demanding his release, and on that group is Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch. So on the positive note, there are many people standing up and demanding, and if anything, India are exposing themselves in the arrest of Khurram Parvez. They attempted to do it with him in 2016, and he was in jail for 75 days, but was then released because it was judged that his arrest was illegal. And so, of course, he's in under the Public Safety Act. They can keep him as long as they want without charge. So it's quite a brutal system. So it really I think it is quite dramatic in a way that it's come into this, and then you're looking around at the world, internationally, and seeing that world leaders, for example, still seem to be very silent on it, and just hoping we can get enough what's the word I'm looking for, raising of awareness and support for him from other people, which does seem to be happening, but we need to raise that further. So, there's petitions out there, people are writing, making it quite big, but at this stage he's still in jail. So it's sad when a human rights defender is deemed to be a terrorist.
Yeah, and I find, what surprises me is that, as you said, the world seems to be quiet, or at least the political, leaders worldwide. And this is what surprises me, that when, obviously, any unlawful arrest of any citizen is bad enough. But when it's the press, for example, the media do get together and protest about if somebody from the media has been arrested wrongfully. But in the case of the human rights activists, it seems like nobody wants to rock the boat, and that's something that really saddens me. Kashif, your comments on that, please?
No, obviously, you're absolutely right that the media plays an important role usually, but when it is, just showing the one side of the story, that creates an issue, and big media organizations are doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah. Well, all we can do is hope and pray, and perhaps, as you said, Claire, that common sense will prevail in the end, and he will be released without a.
Totally agree with. Yeah, totally agree with both of what what both of you have said there.
Yeah. Well, coming back to the topic of discussion, you recently visited Azad Kashmir. I believe this was your first ever visit there. I'm not sure, but you can tell us more about that. But also, if you could highlight to us that your purpose for the visit and your expectations and experiences there, and how you were received by the people.
Yes, certainly. It was my first visit to Kashmir. It was my second to Islamabad, but my first out to Kashmir. So, initially it came up as just as a tourist going out to visit. We've got our team out there, and just to be on the ground and support, and for me to get an idea of what it was actually like out there, and ground realities on Azad's side, and meet with all manners of people, standing up for Kashmir globally. And at the same time, as Let Kashmir Decide, as a global coalition, we were launching this humanitarian mandate, and we have launched the humanitarian mandate, and we thought it would be a really good idea to actually launch it from Kashmir. Now, obviously, we can't get into Indian-occupied Kashmir, but I was going out to Kashmir, so we thought it would be really good that we then launch it from a tea place, because one of our themes is solidarity for Kashmir, where we encourage people to drink tea every 5th of every month. So that Now, I did look into the logistics of it because obviously my visa was a tourist visa, and I did meet with the Pakistan consulate in Scotland, and we discussed over whether that would be okay, because one of the things on my visa is that I'm not to go to demonstrations, or I'm not to protest, I'm not to actively demonstrate. But it was felt that this was okay. It was just tea. We're just, there was going to be Kashmiri music, and just launch this as a way of launching it from Kashmir. So then I started getting in touch with a few people to say I was coming out, and on personal level wanted to just meet them for a cup of tea. These are people that I've worked with. And then I guess what happened was, as soon as people got wind that I was going, or when I arrived, these small get-togethers for cups of tea became like really big. And my time was really filled up with a lot of, I guess it was activism, but it wasn't intended activism. It was just to meet with people. So, for example, we met with Mashaid Hussain, a senator in not the parliament, but the equivalent to the House of Lords in Islamabad, and I was going to meet at his house for a cup of tea, but it all changed, and we went up to the parliament, and we had a meal there and tea there and discussion there, and it was brilliant. And then another group I'm part of, INSPAD, which is a peace organisation, had then turned the tea invite into like a press conference, a press thing, where lots of people were there, and we discussed the issues. And I was given an award of a Peace Defender Award and an Icon of Peace Award. And we were fed and given tea, and it was another lovely experience. And I saw people that were from different Kashmiri organisations raising their voice, and human rights groups. And so we were kind of really busy going from one group to another, but everybody's so welcoming. Wherever I went, I felt like either I couldn't make up my mind if I felt like a princess or a rock star, but they were so welcoming. And then we headed off into Kashmir, down to Kotli, and I had this lovely first day, if you like, of complete freedom. I met with some friends from the UK. We went and sat and had lunch by the River Punch. We were up looking at the view spot, driving through the town. It was absolutely lovely. It was really, it's like, going back 30 years almost was what I felt, which was quite a luxury when you get caught up in all the fast-paced world here. And I really like different societies or cultures, a different way of living, and I really did enjoy it. But then, unfortunately for us, what happened was local security got aware that we were holding this event in the tea shop the next day. So there was concern over it as a safety issue. There was a protest going on near the entrance of the tea place, and obviously there was concern that I would somehow get caught up in that when I wasn't meant to be. So it took away then the kind of freedom of movement, because we were offered either security and we could still go ahead with it, or we still had to, we opted to retain our freedom of movement, as it were, but we still had to phone in to say where we were, what we were doing, and where we were going. So, perhaps it was quite naive of me to think I could just go out there, have a cup of tea, launch a mandate, when really you are in a disputed country. And that was something that we just had to take in our stride, and it meant I just stayed there really another 2 days. We had plans to go to other cities, villages, towns, and I really just wanted to meet with the people on the ground and have cups of tea and chat and see the place really. But because of the security presence and that feeling of I don't know how to describe it. It wasn't, for me, it wasn't concern or worry, but the people around me were a bit on edge, and having to constantly call, it was a bit unnerving for them. So we headed back to Islamabad then and filled the time up again with some more meets and a TV program, and again a visit to a human rights place. So I was really well embraced, and I think if Let Kashmir Decide wasn't as big as it was, then I wouldn't have had the problems that I'd had. And obviously it's disappointing for me, because until Kashmir resolution is solved, or there's some change, then I won't be able to visit there freely at the moment as a tourist. I would need to see about applying probably for an NGO visa and having to have security. So it was an eye-opening trip. And I mean, part of the purpose, I work as a campaigner to raise awareness. Now, I made videos of the trip, all the meets. And so when I returned, I think it took me to put all the videos and the pictures together and make them as a sequence. And then I have my own YouTube channel, so I share them on that, which is the Claire Bidwell YouTube channel. So it's all encompassing. It was a great experience, personal challenge, meeting people, being able to raise awareness and having a deeper knowledge, of the situation and making more connections.
Yeah. Well, you started by talking about Kashmir Tea on the 5th of every month. Well, I'll tell you, following you, I've now become a proper tea addict for Kashmiri tea. and I've got like boxes full of it now, whole stock.
That's fantastic.
So I don't wait till the 5th of every month. It's a daily ritual with me now.
It's your every day of the year is Kashmiri tea.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I now would like to open a tea shop in Glasgow, a Kashmiri tea shop. That's where I'm going next.
But you mentioned about the places you visited. Some of the places you mentioned, Kotli, for example, or even Islamabad, I have never actually seen in my whole life, and I'm quite envious of you that 6,000 miles away you managed to see all of those places, and me sort of being born in Pakistan and never actually got the chance. But hey, who knows? One day maybe.
You must go. You must go. You really must. Yeah, you must go.
Yeah,
I'd advise anybody to go. Really.
Yeah. But it's I think a positive thing that you also mentioned regarding Let Kashmir Decide is that if it's being noticed as an organisation enough that it's probably rocking the boat somewhere along the line, then that's got to be really worth the effort, hasn't it? If it's upsetting those who it probably is expected to upset, then perhaps you made your mark.
Yeah, absolutely. And where the bottom line was, the concern was, or what they'd said was that Indian agents do operate in the area. And if my Facebook page is banned in India, then I'm on their radar. And I think a big concern, isn't it, is if something happened to me while I was out there, my government are going to be saying, what have you done without, and they would get the blame. And also, I have to respect another country's their requests, what they say, what they advise, what they see. So it's not something I would fight against. It just, you do as you're told. And that's in respect to my own government and take their... but you're right, for them to get that concern that I wasn't going to be able to just go in and have a simple cup of tea and that it could be more elements around it, then yes, you're right. We're making our mark.
Yeah. Kashif, is anything you'd like to ask Claire?
I mean, Claire, you mentioned about the protest. I was just interested to hear, was it against your program or it was just a usual thing? Because I know that protest happens in that area regularly.
Yes, a good question. So this protest that was happening, what had happened was, this is the alleged stories, were that the local police or local somebody had been into a JKLF office out there and taken literature. One of the JKLF groups has recently going for just direct independence, nothing else. And so they've released like a freedom mandate. And apparently many copies were removed from the offices there. So this group, JKLF group, were protesting at the Chowk about the leaflets. So they were at the Chowk doing 3-hour leaflets. Now, I saw the people there and I know some of them from my online activity, and it was that way that I wanted to go to say hello, but I thought, no, I can't be seen at that protest, as it were, because I can't be at protests. So things like that were difficult. I found, I personally, I found the whole timing of everything really strange. Or, you know, on whichever side that it was, there was this. And, you know, I would have loved to have seen the protesters at the Chowk, and I did indicate this to them through message, that, you know, sit with a cup of tea. You're going to have more impact than keep shouting at the people around you. And that's something through the global mandate we could, you know, share, because what happened was the event itself was cancelled in order to keep everybody safe. We couldn't then guarantee everybody else's safety. So it was cancelled. I mean, people could still go along and have their own cup of tea, which some people did. You know, so it was still, we still view it that we launched our mandate from Cotley, albeit not in the way we wanted to. So this protest was a group that's there that were protesting about the local, I don't know who, the police or whatever, it was somebody taking away their literature. So I think since then, yeah, they're meant to be returning their literature. So it was something like that. So it wasn't, you know, this is what's difficult because of this. I've gone out there. It took me probably a day to get out there. Awareness. And then there's this group sitting at the Chowk shouting at the local people, and you're kind of like, here's a doorway to the whole world here if you want to step into it. Now, I can't tell people what to do, and that's how they protest. I could only perhaps suggest. But for me, as an international campaigner, I found quite a lot of that quite frustrating. And then maybe, you know, it was also indicative of perhaps why the event was cancelled, because they were protesting nearby. So I did feel a little bit of irk about that as well, I guess. But this is all part of the Kashmiri freedom movement, unfortunately, is this, I don't know how to describe it, different voices or disunity, or not unity, just trying to share everybody's voices, but people are singing from different hymn sheets. So it can get a bit complicated. So I'm disappointed they were there at the Chowk, I guess. Had they not been there, would there have been any issue? And I don't know the answer. You know, I don't know. It probably wouldn't have been any issue.
Yeah, I think the problem is, you know, culturally, people are used to having those kinds of loud protests. And then often things get out of hand as well. And, you know, particularly when you've got people with their own hidden agenda in there, and trouble starts. And usually at gatherings like that, there is always, you know, some sort of trouble created by the troublemakers, because their purpose is there just to, you know, to go there and just cause havoc. And it's probably going to take a long time before people get used to the idea of protesting in a different way. There's more to protesting than shouting out slogans and you know, calling names and so on and so forth. But hopefully, I think things will. I think. Yeah. The other thing.
Well said, I think.
Yeah. I'm interested also in your view of ordinary people away from, you know, the politics. How were you received by, you know, did you visit any villages or anything like that? And, you know, how did you find people's attitude?
It was just Cotley, but I did do a few personal visits, and people were like, you know, really welcoming of me, I think, of being a Western woman and being a visitor and being a guest and wanting to offer you food and tea, and really, really warm, you know, just warm. And you felt accepted for whoever you were in any form that you were, and made to feel special, really, to be honest. They couldn't have been more hospitable if they tried, really. I mean, they did a lot for me. And I had, you know, my own friends, my own group that I work with as a team, you know, they just went out of their way to make sure, you know, I was looked after, everything was, you know, that I was, you know, felt good in their country, as it were, and felt welcome. And so it you know, that for me on a personal level with everybody that I met was very inspiring and very rewarding, you know, and I brought a lot back with me in terms of, how would you say, strength as a person, or strength, faith in humanity, restored, these good people out there, because we're working in a line that it can be some days quite traumatic. When you're seeing, it's been particularly bad in Indian occupied Kashmir the last week with the fake encounters and innocent civilians dying, and then 3 young boys just pulled from a car and shot in broad daylight. Now, these things take an emotional toll on you, and I don't even live there. So to have an experience whereby, you see people that are supporting you, and try and give you the best experience and make the most of it is very, gives you courage, gives you strength. And so I brought back a lot of that with me. It kind of, because I always feel, sometimes I feel like I'm on my own as a campaigner, but then times like that remind me, no, you're never alone. There's people everywhere that I can reach out to or talk, or are just, we're all building one another up. So, yeah, it was great on a personal level and also great on an activist level.
Excellent. Did you ever manage to go to the other side of the Kashmir regarding the same?
Sadly, no. Yeah, no, sadly, no, because I was in Kotley from the Friday, so I just really got there the Friday afternoon, so it was just a wind down of the afternoon, and then Saturday was the only day I got to wander, and that was mainly around Kotley. We did go to the tea house, which was great, so we were there the night before, and I'm really glad we went, because I'd seen the tea house on Facebook, and it looked amazing, and I thought, must go there, so I was glad that I went, but no, we left. We kind of laid low, really, because of, what was going on, and then sadly had to leave. So I did have different plans to visit areas, but couldn't.
And being so, Kotley being so close to the line of control, did you get a chance to hear people's views? Because, as you mentioned, there is often exchange of fire as well from both sides, and that obviously has an impact on the local people as well. But did you get to hear any stories, any particular?
Yes, I did. Quite simple. I think it's 15 miles from Lock, and I think that's the closest as a tourist I'm allowed to go. Right. And people were showing me the hills of where the line of control was, and they've removed loads of trees. They said there used to be trees up there, but they've all been removed. And then there was kind of hills on the other side of the River Punch where they were saying, there's houses all up these hills, these mountains. It's amazing that they go so high, but that's what they say. And bombs have dropped on that, on that mountain opposite them, and that is quite scary, for them. And that's what they were expressing, and that's what they're living.
Yeah. Yes, Kashi.
This you talked about the Kashmir tea. I was just relating it to, the protest you were talking about as well. Do you think that the people who were inside for that tea arrangement were more in terms of, the numbers than the outside, or it was more or less the same numbers?
I think possibly, I don't actually know because the event never happened.
Oh, right. Okay.
I think they possibly would have been about, I think they possibly would have been about the same numbers coming. I'm aware there were a lot of people coming, and obviously on the day when it was sort of cancelled, or there was a lot of our phones were blowing up, so that was quite hard to deal with. It was quite a stressful day all round, actually, and it's something I don't, of a trip, I try not to dwell on that part of it because it was, you're trying not to let it jade anything or disappoint anything, and on some levels I was like, well, that ended up being one of the reasons I was going out there. I thought I'd cleared it with people, that it was okay, but obviously not enough. So no, I think the numbers would have been on a par, and I don't know, the people at the protest some of them may well have come in and joined us anyway.
Later on, yeah.
So that so hard to know.
As Abdul said, that people have different agendas. Some people are attention seeker as well, and some people don't understand the way at all. Because traditionally that's the way people protest. It's shouting. A lot of shouting is involved. I think that part of the world overall, when they are protesting, it's not a proper peace protest. It's very, a loud protest in terms of voices, shouting and everything. So I think it's one of the reasons they were doing exactly the same thing. And they go through a lot of issues on a normal, their daily life, because a lot of them have relatives the other side of the Kashmir. Anything happens there on a daily basis, or regularly. Some people have, they lose their relatives because they're dead because of the incidents in Kashmir. So, a lot of frustration inside, and they just find the opportunity to blast. They have no other way of doing it. That's one of the reasons, I guess.
Yeah, totally. And, I think it's easy to put my own personal take on it because I was there at the time. But, total respect for all these people for what they're doing. We all do things in our own way. And to be fair, the people at the Chowk were not that noisy in terms of they were sitting. It was like a sit-in protest. And then this particular group are quite articulate in their speeches. They create some really good speeches. It just felt when I was there, I guess if I could have changed a few things, I would have done just because of my experience. But my experience is different. I'm on the outside. I'm not on the inside. I don't live with what they've lived with. I've not... So it's just taking a stand back on it really, and live and let live and respect for all. But I think I also came back, and one of the things I felt after the end of the trip was that there were some people that wouldn't support the international perspective and were sticking to their own. And for me, I can't understand that, why you wouldn't take any avenue of raising of awareness, and so it was kind of, again, there's a couple of situations where I've had my eyes open to group or to people, and I've just thought, in respect of, I don't trust some groups or some people because they're not singing the same line, and so like you say, lots of people have got different agendas, and it can get very complicated.
Yeah, I think the problem is that all too often the religious card is played to the audience, and people do tend to sort of tilt, towards that side more. And it's the same thing in the Indian occupied Kashmir as well. We obviously there is more injustice against the Muslim population of Kashmir, but it's not just the Muslims; it's also the Hindus and the Sikhs and other communities there who hold the same view for an independent Kashmir. And so we find that quite often in Azad Kashmir, I can tell you in particular, that if you publicly announced for independent Kashmir, the authorities would not be too happy, to put it politely.
Yeah.
So that's
yes. Yeah.
So that's part of the reason I think you get people reluctant to talk about an independent Kashmir. And as you said, JKLF and they've called for that, but the difficulties are there en route for them as well. I don't want to make this too political, but yeah, go ahead.
They were directly protesting as well, weren't they, about the at their town, at the people that were responsible for me being there as well, the security services or the police, whoever it was they were, protesting against. So even though we're a humanitarian group and we're looking for a resolution on a humanitarian basis and let Kashmir decide, unfortunately that was going on at the time that we were there. And, we're supported by all manners of people and all manners of groups. And there was people I would have liked to have met, but sadly, because of the way they're viewed by the authorities, that was made difficult for me as well in the light of that.
But did you before you left the UK, did you actually seek any advice from the Home Office officially, or was it just whatever the general advice is?
Well, it was the Pakistan, the consulate that I spoke to, and
Right.
I remember having the conversation with him. And when I first mentioned about the tea event, his response was an immediate no. And then he kind of paused on himself and he said, he said, that's okay, because you're just in a tea house, you're just having tea. And that's okay. It's not a political event. It's not so that was okay. And also, I had a diplomat in Pakistan that I'd spoken to as well, that I had connections with, and he said it should be perfectly okay. I did have his number if there were to be any problems, but that all went out the window at the time there were problems. But no, I'd sought advice on it, and it seemed to be okay, and I thought it was all going to be okay, and obviously, no, it didn't work like that. But I can, I understand why. I only have to think about the troubles of Northern Ireland, and if somebody came over there and tried to let North Ireland decide, of course they're going to be worried about bombs and guns around at that point. But I didn't feel unsafe at all. I didn't feel, that my time in Cotley, I didn't actually feel unsafe or feel that there was any threat. Doesn't mean that there wasn't, but I didn't feel it. I felt very safe. Just
on a lighter note, I just wondered, for you, going from Scotland to Cotley and to Islamabad or Murray nearby, I don't know if you got a chance to go to Murray, but it's like home from home, isn't it? Practically mountainous area here, same sort of terrain there. But what did you think?
And
weather.
Well, I was always looking for. Yeah, the weather was gorgeous. The weather was completely different to Scotland. It was so warm. It was lovely. Once again, I only saw a part of Kashmir. I didn't see it all. And, I'm aware that there are the mountainous or the green. So, for example, the area I saw, yes, it's like Scotland. We almost passed from, the border, Pakistan into Kashmir, and the change was very rapid. So there was kind of space, the mountains. The difference that I saw between Scotland and there was that their mountains there go up a lot quicker and a lot higher. The ground was a lot drier, not as green, and they had houses all the way up some of the mountains. A lot of the rivers were dirty. In Scotland, they're clean, they're all fresh. You don't see a murky river, whereas the ones I was seeing, the smaller ones, were quite running with brown water as opposed to clear water, although that wasn't true of the bigger river like Punch was lovely. So for Cotley itself, I think the difference I felt was, it's beautiful, but with just the height of the mountains and then the buildings in the mountains, which you don't tend to see in Scotland. But I've been told there are other areas that are more fertile, so that you'll see more green and you'll see. So sadly, I didn't get an opportunity to see, beyond it. Certainly the tranquility, the feeling that you get here is the same feeling you get in Scotland.
Yeah. Sometimes a holiday.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, sometimes a holiday can be a lot more fun even without the beaches, can't it?
Oh, totally. And in it all, it says change is as good as a rest. And in some ways it's like, is this actually a holiday after, going from meeting to meeting and constantly looking at the time to see? And because I met with Michelle Malik.
Okay,
right. What happened to it? It was like the fourth meeting of the day, and I really wasn't feeling very good. I was starting to feel a bit faint, and I just wasn't feeling great. And so after we'd been talking for 10 minutes, it was lovely because she kind of realised that, she said, that I wasn't great, and she was really kind, making sure I had enough sugar, and she could totally empathise with it. So we kind of cut our meeting short, but although we got some good stuff in between because I wasn't feeling so great. Then sadly, I went on to be a little bit sick, and they had to go to the chemist for me to get me some tablets and everything. But I'd just taken on too much in the first day. I travelled that night. I arrived at 3:00 in the morning. I think I got a few hours kip and then got up and carried on with the day. So even moments like that were really nice. So poor old Michelle, then I wasn't very well.
Yes, Kashif.
Yeah, so it was the whole thing was holiday. Yeah.
We have 2 questions on our Facebook page for you, Claire. So one is,
Okay.
Did people know that you were previously an MP in MK? Sorry, UK. I said MK because we live in MK. So
Okay.
they know already that you were an MP
first.
in the past. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not actually an MP, and I've never been an MP. I'm a primary school teacher, and I'm still a primary school teacher. My grandfather was an MP, so that's possibly where that link came. And no, not many people are aware that my grandfather was a member of Parliament. So, I mean, just for me, I think in my upbringing, that's where a lot of my, what's the word? Intolerance of inhumane things or sense of justice, has come from, because my grandfather was a very tolerant man. He was generally socialist. His house was open all hours of the day for people. He was an MP of south or west of London for 26 years, and it was a rapidly changing town, became very multicultural from being a kind of white suburb. And he was became responsible of helping the what's the word, for everybody to get on, if you like, and dealing with things. And like I say, his house was open all the time. He also got through a small members bill which allowed Sikhs to ride motorbikes without helmets. And he was very well loved and respected in the town and regarded at Houses of Parliament. And he used to take us.
The person has responded.
He liked to talk.
The person has responded that he should have read the promo properly. It happens.
Oh, bless him. That's okay. I'm happy that he brought that up, because, that gives me a chance to talk about my granddad as an MP. But no, nobody knew that.
Okay. The other thing he has said, he just, I think it's just a laughable comment. He said that instead of opening your own cafe, would you be interested in holding Kashmiri tea event every 5th of the month?
Yeah, totally. And I think, we are two months ago, or last month, there's a group in Middlesbrough, Tariff, Teesside Against Racism, Islamophobia and Fascism. And they teamed up with PTI and a Pakistan women's group, and they put on a Zoom meet. So it was an international Zoom meet. We had about 15 people on there from all around the world. And so we had the event online. We're doing that again this month. There has been groups that have gone on the ground and done it. One of the things for me is, obviously, I'm in Scotland. I'm on a Scottish island. It's not very easy for me to do. Finances as well, of course, would mean linking with people, but it is somewhere that we do want to go. We would love to, build this up. We've only been doing this 5th of Solidarity campaign since September. And our idea and hope was always that we could escalate it, we could grow it. And certainly, once COVID gives us a little bit more freedom, or people, winter's not the best time, but we would love to have events. I mean, particularly in Scotland, when I've been on the streets in Glasgow, so many people have never even heard of Kashmir. And in the younger generation, they've not even heard of Kashmir rugs, or shawls. At least that was something to cling to before. So I think Kashmiri cultural events and tea events or anything like that will all be really helpful. So yes, is the answer.
Thank you. Thank you for supporting.
I was going to say that's fine. I was just going to say that's something worthwhile for our listeners to think about. And if anybody has any suggestions, any ideas, they're welcome to put those forward, and we'll pass them on to Claire as well. And let's see what happens after that. So brilliant idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Because anybody can hold their Kashmiri tea event anywhere. We've always said it's something somebody could do on their own. You could get together with 4 friends. We always try and encourage, tell somebody new each 5th. It's just one thing to do something new. So perhaps take somebody for tea that doesn't know a lot about Kashmir and tell them. But ultimately, 20 friends all night in any tea place anywhere, or a vigil with tea, and And I mean, Middlesbrough did do that on the very first one. And then what's good with the internet these days is that we can share this event. So although there might only be 20 people there, if we then share out any speeches or the tea or the people, it reaches then a bigger audience. So, you know, ultimately we'd love to see people worldwide. And we're still aiming. I mean, we started wanting to do a campaign whereby we had a tea event. We were going to do it in Muzaffarabad in AJK and make it a big cultural event. We wanted to take one person from every country in the world to be there and then to share back to their countries and make it, you know, something really big. But we realised we have to get the steps there first. So our ultimate goal here is to grow each one every month, and then one day we will have, you know, our solidarity for Kashmir from Kashmir, some big cultural event, and then, you know, share that outwards to hopefully smaller events in towns and cities across the world. That's our grand aim in terms of raising awareness. And the more people that join in and come along with us, then the bigger we can make that.
Well, thank you very much for that, Claire. One other question that comes to mind is that you must have heard that in the recent weeks, if not months, the Sikh community has taken up to holding a referendum in various UK cities as well as worldwide regarding the independence of Indian Punjab and to call it Khalistan. I just wondered if you think that they, you know, the Kashmiris too should go towards something like that, because obviously Kashmiris are also spread, you know, worldwide, and perhaps that would be another, you know, along with all the other things that are happening, this could be something else that could run parallel with the other activities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I'm aware of, I mean, I think it's difficult as a campaigner to kind of know everything really well. Yeah. So, I mean, I've worked with people from Khalistan and involved in this Sikh issue, and I know that they're working alongside Kashmiri activists as well. So the only sticking point would be the lower legalities of it, and I'm not sure if the two are different cases or if they are similar cases, but it's certainly something that can be explored, and I'm fairly confident is being explored. I think it's East Timor as well that got their independence, or there are groups that have worked like this and done this. So there's models out there that Kashmir could follow, and I think, you know, again, hopefully, and I'm confident there are people working on this and looking at this and working with the people. So I know there's a lot of work with the Sikhs, and the Sikhs are helping within the Kashmir issue. So I'm sure the fundamentals that need to be bashed out will be being bashed out somewhere. And I think, you know, I guess for me as a campaigner, I you know, have different people that will help me forward, and that's something that I haven't deeply explored into. I've just come across it, but it is something that, you know, I would like to find out the fundamentalities of it. I've been doing recently, just started last week, a TV show on Jammu and Kashmir TV, which I'm doing with Mary Scully from Australia. And we're looking into, like, because Mary's a political writer, so we're looking at some analysis into the news in Indian occupied Kashmir. Now, last week's show was quite big because so much had gone on, and we were looking into Khurram Parvez and other issues. But that is something that in a program I'm sure we could look at exploring, and then it would be good to have, you know, somebody involved in this issue along to explore that. So I think there's kind of different options out there where we can ask people as well, different human rights activists or different activists in different elements, where we can bring those out. But yes, no stone should be unturned.
I quite agree. And
your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that? Yeah.
For me personally, I think one of the hurdles would be that the Kashmiris seem to be so disunited. You know, they sort of people with totally different views. That if there was a referendum, I just feel that it could decide perhaps once and for all, at least for Kashmiris outside, living outside Kashmir, as to what their views were. But I think the biggest problem is going to be that each section, as they often do, will be accusing the other being traitor. This is what happens. If you know, and this is what for 75 years that has just kept the Kashmiris where they are. It's just the total disunity, and everybody, you know, if I hold one view, then that's just my view, and I think it's the right view, and therefore I'm not willing to listen to your view. And for as long as that goes on, but you know, on a positive note, I think I just wondered whether that's something that could probably unite them for a common cause as well. Because what we're talking about here with Sikh community, I suppose it was easy because it's one part, you know, the East Punjab, which is just one area. But with Kashmiris, you've got the Azad Kashmiris, you've got the Indian Kashmiris, you've got Jammu area, you've got GB, and you know, it's just so spread out that to get people with one voice, it's probably going to be difficult. But if I were about 30 years younger, I would probably want to, you know, have a go and try and set this up and see what people think. But I mean, I wouldn't. Don't make age a thing. You can do anything. You can start right now. Don't make age a thing. For me, I think our global mandate, we're trying around that, the humanitarian one, to bring some unity. So one of the things I think everybody agrees on is the political prisoners, releasing the political prisoners, you know, and the troops out of India and troops out in general. And so it's working through things like that. And I guess if we build unity through things like that, and then, as you say, with, you know, is there any mileage in doing a referendum? And, you know, you should explore it. Never say never. Well, I think in the case of Sikhs, they've also set a government in exile. So, you know, that's another possibility in the longer term. Yes, all these things need looked at. But as you say, people need a voice that they'll listen to, that they'll respect. And there's a lot of disagreement over, you know, as you say, amongst all the ideologies as who ideal be government in exile formed from all of these people coming together for a resolution. But I'm not an expert on any of that, so I would bow down to other people. I just aim to raise awareness. That's my goal. Stand in solidarity and raise awareness the best way I can. Fair enough. Kashif, over to you for the final question or two.
I mean, first of all, I would like to thank you that you mentioned about the safety point of view as well, that you never felt that you were, you know, like you were unsafe in that territory, because a lot of people try to, especially from the other part of the Kashmir, try to say that that part is same as theirs. So thank you so much for that. And obviously you highlighted the culture as well. The love you received from everyone, that part. Thank you so much for that. Any message you want to give give people at the last message, because Abdul Rais will have to, you know, like wrap up in Urdu language as well before the end of the show, what we had discussed. So any message you want to give to the people, please?
Yeah, I mean, for the people that were over there, you know, huge thank you, and doing the gifts I was brought was lovely, and that humanity and that hospitality extended everywhere. You know, was like we say, love can conquer the world. So a big thank you to everybody out there for that. And I think really, you know, I want as many people as possible to drink tea on the 5th of September and upload it to their 5th of every month, 5th of December will be the next, and upload it everywhere, and just keep talking about Kashmir, just keep talking about it wherever they can, because it's not known, enough of it's not known, and it's a shame that these people there have to live within that umbrella. And obviously Indian occupied Kashmir, living under such oppression, we never need everybody to raise their voices for them to, you know, release Khurram Parvez, to release the political prisoners, to stop all the human rights abuses, and just see an end to it. And to me, self-determination, let Kashmir decide, is the simple solution. So a call once again for unity from everybody, and a call for self-determination to include a choice, you know, for all three. different divisions. I think that India have lost the hearts of Kashmiris now, so I'd be very surprised if there were men that would vote right now to go with India, although, you know, they're trying to change the demography so that the people will vote to go with them. So it's really will be probably between Pakistan and independence. But, you know, if everybody unites for democracy, a democratic resolution, then there's more strength and more likeliness of it happening. And raising awareness and pressure on governments and United Nations is the way forward that I see it.
Thank you very much, Claire, for being our guest today. It's been fascinating conversation and listening to you and hearing about all your experiences and your views on other matters relating to Kashmir, including, I might say, Kashmir Tea for Kashmir. So I look forward to the 5th of December for that.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. Take care. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Bye.
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 تو سامعین یہ تھی ہماری آج کی معزز مہمان کلیئر بڈویل جو اپنے حالیہ دورے کے حوالے سے ہمیں بتا رہی تھیں کہ انہوں نے اسلام آباد اور آزاد کشمیر میں کوٹلی کا دورہ کیا اور اس دوران ان کی جو ان کی ایکٹیویٹیز تھیں جو ان کی سرگرمیاں تھیں ان کے حوالے سے انہوں نے ہمیں بتایا اور ساتھ ہی ساتھ وہ اس بات پہ وہ زور دے رہی تھی کہ ابھی ان کا ایک وہ شروع ہوا ہے ایک سمجھنے طریقہ کار کشمیر کی آواز جو ہے وہ دنیا کے سامنے لانے کے لیے اور اس کے لیے وہ ہر ماہ کی 5 تاریخ کو جو ہے وہ چائے کا اہتمام ہوتا ہے اور ان کی درخواست ہے لوگوں سے بھی کہ آپ بھی اپنے گروپس میں یا گھروں میں یا جیسے بھی ہے وہ کشمیری چائے پئیں اور اس کے ساتھ یعنی ایک طریقہ کار ہے لوگوں کو اکٹھا کرنے کا یکجا کرنے کا اور یہ پرامن طریقہ ہے اور آواز اٹھانے کا کہ جو ادارہ وہ چلاتی ہیں لیٹ کشمیر ڈیسائیڈ اس کے تحت بھی یہی ان کا ایجنڈا ہے کہ کشمیریوں کو حق حاصل ہو ان کی آواز سنی جائے وہ جو بھی فیصلہ کرے اس پہ عمل درآمد ہونا چاہیے اور اس کے ساتھ ساتھ انہوں نے تذکرہ کیا خرم پرویز صاحب کا جن کو جو کہ ہیومن رائٹس ایکٹیوسٹ ہیں کشمیری ہیں ان کو بھارتی حکومت نے گرفتار کیا دہشت گردی کے نام پہ جبکہ وہ ایک بہت ہی پرامن شخصیت ہیں لیکن بہرحال وہ ان کی بھارتی حکومت کی آنکھوں میں کٹکتے ہیں تو لہٰذا ان کو گرفتار کر لیا گیا تو اس کے لیے وہ ان کی سپورٹ میں بات کر رہی تھیں اور ہمیں بتا رہی تھی کہ ہم سب کو بھی مل کے جو ہے اس بات پہ کرنا چاہیے پروٹیسٹ کرنا چاہیے احتجاج کرنا چاہیے اور اس کے علاوہ انہوں نے بتایا ہمیں کہ اپنے تجربات اپنے جو ان کے ساتھ جو لوگوں کا تعاون تھا وہاں پہ جس طریقے سے آزاد کشمیر میں اور اس کو جو پیار ملا جو عزت ملی اس کے لیے بھی وہ بہت شکریہ ادا کرتے سب لوگوں کا تو ہم ان کا شکریہ ادا کرتے ہیں کہ انہوں نے آج ہمارے شو میں حصہ لیا اور ہمیں اپنے تجربات کے بارے میں بتایا تو کاشف آپ ہیں آن لائن؟
جی میں موجود ہوں. آواز آ رہی ہے عبدالرحیم صاحب؟ عبدالرحیم صاحب تو سامعین مجھے لگتا ہے عبدالرحیم صاحب سے رابطہ منقطع ہو گیا ہے تو اس کے ساتھ ہی ہم اختتام کریں گے آج کے اس میگزین شو کے لیے جو کہ ہر اتوار کو ہم 6 سے 7 کے درمیان کرتے ہیں. انشاءاللہ تعالی آپ سے اگلے ہفتے پھر ایک نئے مہمان اور ایک نئے موضوع کے ساتھ ملاقات ہوگی اتوار کی شام 6 سے 7 کے درمیان ریڈیو FM 103.1 آواز کے ساتھ. آپ سے گزارش ہے کہ ہمیں اپنی دعاؤں میں یاد رکھیے گا اور آپ سے پھر ملاقات ہوگی. السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ.
زمینوں میں ہے آسمانوں میں ہے ہم محمد کے ادنا غلاموں میں ہے ان کے سائے تلے ان کی رحمت تلے ان کی باتوں کی پر نور خوشبو تلے ان کی چادر تلے ان کے دامن تلے ان کے پر نور گنبد کے سائے تلے ترجمہ ہے جہاں میں اخوت کے ہم مجبور ہے اس کے ساتھی ہیں ہم اس کے بھائی ہیں ہم سورج اندھیروں میں آیا ہوں میں ایک درخشاں روایت کا حصہ ہوں میں جو ہمیشہ رہے گا وہ قصہ ہوں میں ہم کو اخلاص ہے ہم کو احسان ہے ہم کو انفاق ہے ہم کو ایمان ہے مٹائیں گے غربت کے گہرے نشان پھر رہیں گے یہ قاتل اندھیرے کہاں کون ٹھہرے گا اپنے مقابل یہاں دسترس میں ہماری زمین آسمان رات کو الوداع الوداع جبر کی رات کو الوداع الوداع جھوٹ کو الوداع سود کو शान